The first main installment in nearly 4 years, Far Cry 5 has had a lot to prove to both fans and critics who were tiring of the series' shtick back in 2014. In response, Ubisoft have attempted to shake up the aging franchise, opting to set it in America for the first time ever, focus on hard-hitting villains, and streamline its often cumbersome gameplay systems. While all of those are noble goals though, the end result isn't quite the massive overhaul that many fans were expecting after so long away. The classic Far Cry gaming loop of pursuing story threads, exploring, and of course taking out outposts is all here in all its glory and is better than ever. It's not just a playground with endless things to do. For the first time since the third game, exploring the open world feels genuinely dangerous and alive, thanks in no small part to the way you now gain missions and intel from talking to the NPCs in towns, rather than simply blowing past them and going up a watchtower. Gunsfire also shake up the gameplay a little bit as well, giving you a wealth of companions to help you while you're out on your journey in the same way as the Phantom Pain or even the likes of Fallout 4. They don't change things too much, and they can get in the way more than you'd like if you choose the wrong combination of people. Let me just tell you, a bear and a guy with a rocket launcher don't make for the best buddies, but they are a welcome addition. It helps that the missions themselves are always usually spectacular, having you interact with well-written characters or engaging with some of the franchise's best set pieces yet. However, there can be a tone problem with these missions, which I'll dig into more later on, as one minute you can be harvesting bull testicles to throw a festy for a town, only to be thrown in pursuit of a horrific torturer called the Cook the next. But it would be amiss to say that the quests themselves aren't all memorable and fun. Even better, for once the gunplay isn't a last resort option, and your character's beefed up health and the buttery smooth gameplay mechanics give firefights the kick they need to actually be enjoyable. No longer are you running from cover to cover, shooting with inaccurate weapons, and trying to get bullets out of your arm over and over again. Thank the Lord. The enemy AI, on the other hand, well, that leaves something to be desired, as does the actual variety of who you're fighting. Likewise, while the gunplay itself is easily the best it's ever been, the gun selection is extremely lacking. The weapons themselves are fine, but there's no incentive to switch up what you're using, and once you have the handful of 4 that you know get the job done, you probably won't switch them out for the duration of the game. While the gameplay is satisfying though, it's immediately apparent that not much has changed since Far Cry 4. The weapons are the same, the enemies are the same, and the skill trees are the same. The latter is particularly egregious, as you spend virtually the entire game unlocking the same old abilities that have become standard over the past few releases. There's barely anything that's new, it's all bigger health bars or faster reload times, and you get the feeling that the game is intentionally hampering you from the get-go just so it can make you feel a little more powerful as it progresses. It's all deathly boring, and doesn't exactly feel like a reward for your time. Unfortunately, what makes this perk system worse is that it makes redundant one of the series' most enjoyable features. Hunting animals has always been central to the Far Cry experience, and it's never felt better than in this game, but unfortunately there's no real incentive to make you want to go out there and interact with this wildlife. There's no longer a dedicated crafting system tied to collecting pelts, and while it was always a bit frustrating to not be able to unlock a 4th weapon holster until you collected X amount of skins from a certain animal, there must have been a better way to make that actively fun rather than doing away with it altogether. Instead, those upgrades are now tied to the regular old skill tree. And yeah, it might sound like I'm babbling on about these upgrades, but one of the only tangible rewards for exploring is getting more points to spend on abilities. So when these abilities are so useless, it sucks out some of the fun from investigating every part of the map. Fortunately, when the perks stop encouraging exploration, the main story more than picks up the slack. Joseph Seed and his family of nutjob cultists continue the tradition of Far Cry's well-written villains, with each of the 4 main antagonists having their own creepy ways to torment you depending on whose region you're playing in. Like the drug-fueled anarchy of previous titles, the story dips its toes in surreal waters quite often, leading to some genuinely terrifying moments where you can't quite tell what's real and what isn't. However, because Far Cry 5 has taken a page out of Ghost Recon Wildlands' book, giving you a selection of bosses that you can take down in any order you want, it loses even the limited narrative focus of the previous games. Because progression is tied to anything you do in the game, rather than specific story missions, you can miss some of the more compelling character interactions by the time you're forced to confront the area's lieutenant. Obviously, when the arcs of these characters come to a head, missing those powerful interactions dilutes the importance of their resolutions. Also, while the characters and the world are well realized, there's always a nagging feeling that Far Cry 5 doesn't go as far with its concept as it could have. While a lot has been said about whether or not Far Cry 5 should have been a more biting critique of current affairs, the bigger problem is the tonal whiplash that you get throughout the game. The opening promises a deliciously grim-dark take on cult mobs and religious extremism that's constantly reinforced by the story missions surrounding each lieutenant, and for the most part it's presented so well. Unfortunately, just about everything you do in between these harrowing story moments from here on out is tongue-in-cheek. Whether you're ravishing fools with Cheeseburger the Bear or taking missions from a guy who uses the phrase Obama-loving libtards. I mean, alright. It's not that the comedy doesn't work, though it is a little embarrassing at times. It's that the game tries to have its cake and eat it too, ultimately hindering the cohesiveness and the power of its main story in the process. This is alleviated a little bit when you play co-op though, as the wacky chaos you can cause with a friend takes precedent over any of the story beats. In that respect, the multiplayer succeeds by upping the ante massively, but unfortunately you can tell that the game hasn't been made from the ground up with co-op in mind, and it fares worse than other open world games in the Ubi stable. Arcade is the other major multiplayer mode, and it could be a game changer if it's supported post-launch. Giving players access to a wild array of tools to create whatever the hell they want, the mode has already produced some memorable maps in its infancy and could be enough to keep players coming back to the game in the long run. Overall then, Far Cry 5 is a weird one. As a sequel, it doesn't do enough to differentiate itself, and as a story it constantly falls down, yet I can't stop playing it. The core gameplay loop is so satisfying, missions so memorable, and the world so goddamn beautiful that it's hard to not get lost in the minutiae of the game's capital C content. There's a lot of problems for sure, and it can be a little disappointing to see how little has changed between installments, but there's no denying just how intoxicating Far Cry 5 can be, making for an overall score of 3.5 stars. I think that's fair, but more importantly, I want to know what you guys thought down in the comments. Do you think Far Cry 5 lived up to the hype, or is it another casualty to open world fatigue? Either way, I've been Josh, you've been watching What Culture, and I'll see you soon.
Oh, wasn't that something? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe below, and also the people who made this lovely video, they're appearing right here. But if you're thinking to yourself, I want to see more content, Jules, then why not look above my head, as there probably is some. I don't know. I can't see it. Until next time.